Hey Neppers, it's me, Wild Neptune, and this is going to be the second part of the World Arena Season 5 tier list videos, where each day we go over an element. Today it's going to be the weed, the grass, the broccoli, the grass element of Epic 7. Before that though, if you're new to this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and check me at Twitch at twitch.tv/WildNeptune. So, let's go over the tiers very quickly. Dominant, these are going to be the units going to be warping the meta that dictate the drafts, your bans, your pre-bans even. Meta units, these are units that are going to be the bulk of a lot of drafts. Alternative, these are substitutes for units in the meta tier mostly, or maybe you need some sort of redundancy in your draft. Your specialized units, these are going to be the things that are counter picks, or maybe things that only really work in particular drafts with particular other units. Out of the meta / meme, things that might have been strong in the past that just aren't that good right now, or just, well, things that are funny. And then not usually viable units that don't bring enough value in most matches to be picked ever. So, with that being said, let's get going. We will start off with Adley, the Chadley himself. And surprisingly, he has actually been experimented with in World Arena at high levels. However, he's going to be out of the meta / meme right now for a couple of reasons. One, the unit that he typically countered was Faithless Litica, because his kit works where he gets CR when his allies get critical hit, I believe it is. So a lot of the times, you build a very fast Adley, and you would cut the Faithless Litica with the Adley, and then you would reset their enemy skills or just kill them, because he does do pretty good damage, right? However, I'm pretty sure that even in testing, people have been like, he's good at this, but not quite good enough at it to make him a real valuable counter pick in those cases. And the fact also that Faithless Litica is non-existent these days has also caused them to also be non-existent these days. Alencia is, right now, I would say, largely out of the meta. There are times where you could pick her as a specialized or an alternative slot, but she's just really hard to pick right now, and a lot of this has to do with consistency. As Mind's Eye, if it doesn't proc, Alencia doesn't really do a lot. She needs something in her kit to make it where Mind's Eye is either much stronger, so when it does proc, you get a lot of value from it, or it needs ways to proc more often, right? That I think is only the first step that they could take with her. I definitely think she needs a push right now, as a lot of heroes that are being used because they are consistently strong, or if they're not consistently strong, their upside is just so high when they go off that you're willing to take that risk. Alencia has risk without a lot of upside in it. Bazaar is going to be a kind of I guess we could put him in meta. It's really hard because power-wise he's meta, but I think usage-wise he's more specialized. He's definitely seen more as a counter pick these days, because he does use up a slot for DPS or for, say, a knight that you could pick. Also, he has been power crept by AOL Angelica, as she largely fills the same role he does and does it much better than he does usually too. So, and she also has less counters than Bazaar does, but he's still very strong in the right circumstances. Baiken, right now she's going to be not really viable at the moment. Very similar to Elfelt, I would say, in how she would be used, but there were just better options. And since everything has immunity these days anyway, it's really rare that she's going to get any true value um, from her kit in a lot of cases. Iceria, also not really going to be viable most of the time. Um, every season, you'll hear about somebody big brain using Iceria for like 2 fights in like High Legend, but only that like one player can do it, right? You're probably not that player. So Celine, it's going to be a specialized counter pick to, of course, things like non-attack skills, stuff like that. Now, from experience, I have noticed that a lot of Cleave teams are actually drafting in ways where Celine isn't as good. They have been drafting things like super high attack, say Politices, just to bait out something like Celine. So just be aware that when you draft her, there is a lot of mind games that goes on with her, and the results might not always be in your favor. Sir Mustache himself, Charles, is right now out of the meta. Again, he is not consistent enough where he is used because his value isn't quite there, and his upside also isn't high enough to be picked at the moment. He just doesn't do enough damage or do enough for his team where you'll be happy choosing him. Sid, I know somebody uses him, right? He could be used as a speed imprint too, but usually not seen that often. Destina is also going to be out of the meta, even in a world where Fairy Tail has become a very strong pick again. Destina just doesn't quite do enough overall compared to other cleansers in the game. So, Evalin, hey, do you want to do really, really good single target damage? Well, here's a secret. Don't pick Evalin. Falcon and Clary. Falcon and Clary, for the first part of the season, saw almost no play at all. However, recently, she has started seeing more usage, which brings her up into the alternative tier. Still not a meta pick, right? You'll still see the FCC Carbon Crow more often, right? But as far as utility knights go, Falcon and Clary definitely has a spot right now. Most of the time, she will be paired with something like, say, Vended Violet or another really high burst damage unit, right? But in the right hands, in the right draft, she is really strong still. I would say definitely not as ubiquitous with a first pick as she was before. Oftentimes, she'll be more of a middle pick in the draft, but definitely a problematic unit if you're not ready for her. And speaking of problematic units, we have Violet, who's going to be the first grass hero that will go into the meta tier. Violet against a water team or against a couple of water units is almost always a must ban, unless your water units are particularly like strong. I would say. Violet is he is hard countered by things like Carrot, obviously. Things like Charlotte, obviously really good against him. And Spectre and Landy, too, since they have abilities that can't be countered, will also do good against him. And he is an RNG hero where sometimes he just doesn't dodge and he dies. But his upside, unlike, say, Charles Alencia, who also have like layers of RNG in their kits too, Violet's upside is so much higher than theirs, which is why he sees use and they don't. Pavel. Right now, Pavel is a dominant level hero. This might change with Bellion. We don't quite know yet. People thought that AOL would kill Pavel, and Pavel still sees a lot of usage, even with AOL in the meta, right? Pavel just is so strong that I think they had to make a unit like Bellion because of him. Now, Pavel does have counterplay, like more than just outspeeding him, right? But what he does for cleave teams is really problematic for players who don't really know the matchup that well, or just don't have the suite of like half a dozen units to pick into those compositions. And just the Pavel alone could ruin a lot of players' matches in World Arena. Green Purgus is going to be out of the meta. You might be surprised. There was a point in the game where Green Purgus was a very scary pick. These days, there's too much stuff that punishes too much AoE. A lot of the AoE that is used is really high value, like Charlotte or Landy's, obviously. And, well, Green Purgus, unfortunately, doesn't quite do enough with his AoE to see that much use. Also, it's kind of RNG, too. So, alright now, Ruzid is going to be currently out of the meta. Again, most S3 pure pushers don't see much usage at the moment. Landy, she's going to be another dominant hero. Landy is maybe the best DPS in the game. There is one other hero, which we'll get to in a future video, that might also be the best DPS. Landy is extremely powerful. She is probably the best tank buster in the entire game. Landy existing is basically why Charlotte has become really strong. There are two builds with Landy. There's the counter with Bloodstone and Speed Set Guiding Light. Both of them are good for different cases, right? A lot of the times, you can tell what she's built on based on the draft of the enemy team. Not always, but, you know, it is something that you can kind of deduce a little bit. But really powerful. Landy can just win you a lot of games where otherwise you would have just been completely blown out. Mui is going to be a more specialized pick. You can see her in Cleave sometimes. However, Mui is going to be used mostly in Caesarea compositions I've seen. She is one of the favorite openers for that comp. Eufine is going to be more of a meme, I would say. And is she viable? Not usually, but there is a funny build where you go high speed on Eufine, and you can strip off a buff and silence the enemy with her S2. And you soul burn, you can soul burn the S3 first, get the extra turn, you stun somebody, and then you use S2. Now, is this good? Will it work most of the time? Probably not, right? But it might catch somebody by surprise, and it's funny when it goes off. So, Rowana, she's gonna be a specialized pick right now. SSB is not that common at the moment. I might pick her once every, say, 30 or so matches, maybe. And when I do pick her, Rowana usually is not picked against her. They're just better things to use against SSB, or they'll ban the SSB, or they need something else to complete their composition. So Rowana has definitely fallen out of favor a lot in World Arena. Even against SSB, when she's picked, Rowana is like half the time not the thing you need to choose. And this has to do with the fact that even if you pick Rowana, you still have to do damage somehow, right? And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to last pick a DPS. Otherwise, you have nothing to actually kill the enemy team with. Senya is going to be a meme. Um, like the other 5-star grass units here, she's not consistent enough to be used in what she does with her overall S2 kit. And even with the Lilius Cleave, that's not really a thing, right? That you see a lot anymore. You didn't really see it a lot even when it was relatively a rogue strategy, right? So, the great Mortelix. I would say that after a few weeks of his buff, he's still not good enough to use. Things like Spectre, things like Landy, Charlotte, right? Even things like Carrot and stuff like that. He's really weak against. Mortelix's problem is not that his kit is that bad. It's just that a lot of the units that are really strong right now in the meta are just really good against him, right? So that's more of what his case is. We have Grass Rin, and we'll also put her into a meme. Because it's, Grass Rin. And for the record, I really like Rin. Rin has always been design-wise one of my favorite units in the game. So, speaking of other units that I really, really like the design, it's going to be Lilibet. And Lilibet, unfortunately, is also not a viable unit these days. She really never was, unfortunately. And I really hope that Lilibet gets some love soon in a buff patch, because I really want it to be good for once, right? And I'm not just saying this because I have like a million molds into her already, okay? I'm not saying this because my Lilibet might be bordering on like, triple S, right? Okay? But she just doesn't do enough to justify using, even against the maid Chloe's and stuff like that. She's Lilibet is a little bit too hard to take care of, I would say. I think, honestly, if they gave her like a stealth mechanic, she'd automatically be a lot better. But maybe something like her S3 can never miss. Stuff like that would have to happen, I think, to have her see more usage. Vivian is going to be also out of the meta right now. A lot of Cleave teams don't have to buff anymore to get those massive kills, because Pavel does the attack buff for them, right? Or not, Sigrid will do the attack buff for them, and then they just kill you like one at a time, right? Remember, Cleave is a misnomer now. Most Cleave teams now are just single target burst teams that take out a target or two and then kind of just whittle you down the rest of the way, right? So, and that's why Vildred also doesn't really see a lot of usage anymore, even in Cleave teams. Even before Pavel, Vildred was relatively rare in Cleave. Some of this had to do with the fact that most people would use their green Vildreds to imprint Arbiter Vildred instead. But since Cleave is a very, I would say, whale-dominated playstyle, or at least a luck-dominated playstyle, right? So, like, I would definitely say, out of all playstyles in the game, Cleave has the most concentrated number of high spenders in Epic 7. And because of that, I would say that a lot of Cleavers at higher rankings will actually have Triple S Vildreds in their rosters, but right now, there are just better options than a green Vildred. Especially if you're drafting Pavel, because then you kind of just lose to, say, like, Carrot Charlotte, right? In those scenarios. Ray. So, like Destina, Ray doesn't really see any play, even though in some places you would think could be pretty good. When both Ray and Destina were being picked against things like First Pick Fairy Tale that was, a season ago or so, the consensus was that Destina was the better unit, and I don't really think that's changed at all. They might be kind of even, but even being even, they're still both out of the meta. And finally, we have Ram. And Ram is a very strong PvE hero. Unfortunately, not really that good for PvP. So, the grass tier list video is over. Here is the list. Do you agree with this? If so, or if not, tell me below in the comments. Anyway, it's been a good one. Nep out.